I recently went through a period during which I had no idea what I was doing with my life. It lasted about 30 years. A few years ago, while I was holding a human heart, that period came to a head. See, I'm a writer, but I was trying to quit. After years of having book manuscripts rejected and writing things I didn't like this horrible ad, sorry, I folded up my writing fingers for good. I was the only person in LA actively trying not to be a writer. Instead, I tried lots of other things that my grandma would call hippie things. I got a master's degree in spiritual psychology, not regular psychology, spiritual. I started a travel company. I became a doula. I studied Reiki. And I did what most people do when they have an existential crisis. I became a yoga teacher. I was a horrible yoga teacher. I laughed out loud when people farted. And see, when you're a yoga teacher, people think you're a doctor. They come up to you after class and they ask you about their sciatica. And I want to tell them the truth that I just took some workshop with a bunch of other people in their 30s who were questioning their life. And I don't even know what sciatica is. So when I heard about an anatomy course that required 200 hours of full-on total human dissection, I thought, yes, this might help me and maybe it'll hold the key to what I really want to do with my life. So yeah, it was for yoga. But deep down, the reason I was so into dissecting a human cadaver is this. I'm kind of obsessed with death. See, my dad committed suicide. And if you didn't know that, I'm not sure why, because I talk about it all the time. Oh, you went to a new restaurant this weekend? Well, my dad killed himself in '96. They know me. See, there's a before and after in suicide, and when you get to that after point, everything changes forever. I will never forget that moment, the last moment of the before. I was practicing cheerleading in the living room because that's what I did when I was 16. I was way into it. I mean, like, really into it. I loved writing motivational rhymes about touchdowns. And then there was a phone ring, and then there was my mom standing there stunned, quiet, and she said it, "Your father killed himself." I could feel a difference in my heart as the before bridged to the after. Neither of us knew what to do next, so I got in my car alone, just 3 months after I'd gotten my driver's license, and I drove. And I screamed, and I cried. I love crying in my car. Now, I always get mad at movies when they just show suicide as this romantic answer. One day I will make a Romeo and Juliet sequel where the Capulets and the Montagues have to find their family members' bodies and read the police documents and question whether it was their fault. And I would definitely have them read over the medical examiner's report. Once I read my dad's medical report, I stopped writing poems about touchdowns. And I started hanging out in my room, alone. I would blast Bone Thugs and Harmonies, The Crossroads. And I would tell my dad I would meet him there at those crossroads. I analyzed my dad's death, but also death in general. I mean, how did it work? How was it that someone could create his own? And what was the experience of dying? I mean, what was happening in the body, and in what order? And what was it like for him to take that last breath? And did he know it was his last breath? And was he in pain, and did he think about me at all? I would think about how his body lay there for days before they found it, how he was alive and suddenly dead, before and after. So yeah, I'm really into yoga and I want to help people with their sciatica, but when I made the reservation to go cut up cadavers in an anatomy lab, I really wanted to stare death in the face. I wanted to know about it so I could stop wondering about it, once and for all. So 2 years ago, on a dreary day in San Francisco, 50 others gathered with me in a huge laboratory. There were 12 cadavers too. They just lay there, obviously, silent. Covered in plastic bags. We were to gather around 4 per cadaver and slowly unzip the silent white bags. I chose a table in the back corner where I thought I could hide if I needed to. And boy, did I need to. I wasn't ready, and I was really scared. But there she was. There was death. Death was real and cold. Death was bloated, rounded, fat eyelids, pale skin, thick ankles and wrists, just cold. We named her Cora, our cadaver. We weren't allowed to take photos, but my friend drew this picture of her. That's what she looked like. And this is gonna be super weird, but I fell in love with Cora. Sorry, hold on. I couldn't really tell what she used to look like because she was so, I love her. She was so full of formaldehyde and her head had been shaved to prevent mold, but I saw her. She had the most perfect fingernails. She had big womanly hips. She was maybe about 70. I saw all of her moles and her eyes and her pubic hair and the way her feet looked like they'd spent years in high heels. It was all of her just laid out before me, total vulnerability. And I stood there, like I am now, choking back tears all the way down my throat. And they weren't about Dad or my life or me. They were full of gratitude because some total stranger, donated her entire body so that I could learn, or so that I could face this death that had been plaguing me since I was 16. That is the best gift I had ever received, and I hate to admit it, I'm sorry, but it is slightly better than a pair of pea underwear. Just a little bit. I know. When I had the courage to look at all 12 generous cadavers, they all looked the same. Cold, shaved heads, bloated faces and hands, men and women, black or white. In death, we are all equal. So here's where it gets weird. So this program was different than a medical school program. It's more holistic, designed to study every little bit. So we go layer by layer, spending the entire first week simply peeling off the skin to study it. You know, kind of like a serial killer would. I cannot believe I did it, but I peeled the skin off a human being like a serial killer would. And I fucking loved it. I did. I was excited to wake up every morning for 3 whole weeks to walk to the lab and put on a fresh pair of gloves and get out my scalpel. I might actually be a serial killer, but like a cool one that does yoga. What came next was the layer of fat. It was yellow and squishy and looked like cheap carpet padding. Again, the same on everybody, so another win against racists. Layer after layer, instead of death, I saw life. I saw how this machine that we call a body works, and it blew my fucking mind. For all of this to come together and turn us into these beings that can communicate with each other and love and feel and dance, it is magic. It is millions of pieces working together to make someone blink. In the quiet cold of an anatomy lab, there is no such thing as taboo. I mean, there is just this wave of curiosity that trumps all in there. I mean, we were surrounded by these bodies who were starting to look like picked apart Thanksgiving turkeys, and we were running up to each other saying things like, "You guys, come check out all the dried blood we just found in Harry's bladder." Or, "Gather around, it's time to dissect a penis." 2 weeks of exploring, and our teacher set us down in our morning circle. He said that now things would be different. We would be opening death. Excuse me. I had already taken death face on. I mean, I had dissected its penis. I had learned from it, I felt free and in harmony, and I even felt some sort of closure move in on the story of my dad. But the teacher said that we were about to find out the causes of death just by opening the innermost cavity. So I, with like these big gardening shears, busted open each of Cora's ribs. Then I held her heart in my gloved hands and thought about all the love and blood that had passed through it for over 70 years. It was an enlarged heart and it looked broken. It had been stapled and bypassed at least 3 times. But in my hands, it wasn't hurting anymore. Even as I sliced it in half, nothing hurt Cora now. And that's when I realized, death is peaceful. A tour around the room let us see what had landed all these generous people into the lab. There was cancer, tumors, so many crazy-looking tumors. Lymph nodes like rocks, green livers, collapsed lungs, pneumonia, death. I mean, this was more than sciatica. This was hard. I mean, we'd been around death this entire time, but this was more. This was suffering. Everyone has to die of something. Yeah, I mean, every machine fails one day. We all know this. At some point, there's a part of us that hurts, a part that doesn't work, or in my dad's case, thoughts that had become diseased. I like to think that corrupted thoughts are curable, that we can learn to love ourselves or fight to stop depression, that suicide is never necessary, and that my dad made a mistake and that he would be so mad at himself for giving in to something he could have fixed. But I'll never know the truth. I'll never know what someone else's suffering feels like and how much it may seem utterly unbearable deep inside. And no matter how many stories I write about it, or how much I talk about it, you'll never be able to feel how painful it was that day when my dad left me for the final time. And so it's hard to explain now the peace I felt in that anatomy lab. With every layer, I learned a little more. I learned that death is just another state. We are happy, we are sad, we are living, we are dead. I no longer fear the state that happens to be the final one. I'm not ready for my own yet, but when it comes, I will be. After all, death is peaceful. And maybe that's just really what my dad needed. Peace, relief. In the 6 months since the lab, I have watched people's bodies, in the 2 years since the lab, I have watched people's bodies more closely. I can picture the thick sciatic nerve. I've seen it, you guys, I know exactly what it is. I don't know what to do about it, but I know what it looks like. I see happy drinkers, and I wonder if their livers are as green as the one from lab table 4. I watch obese people carry themselves, and I want to hug them. Mostly, I have more compassion for all humans and their bodies. But more importantly, I have more compassion for the little girl who lost her father. Now, this piece should totally end here, but I should probably tell you that during this anatomy lab in San Francisco, wearing a white coat with bits of brain matter on my shoes, I took a call out in the hallway. It was HarperCollins offering me a book deal. I'm actually on my book tour right now. So the moral of the story is cut up dead people and all your dreams will come true. Thank you very much.